there we go. 8 people have already joined us. Hey, everybody, and more joining in. I want to welcome everybody and take a couple of minutes for more people to join in. But in the meantime, I would say welcome to everybody that's joining us. Please, hi everyone. Do message us if you have any technical difficulties. I hope you can hear us. Can someone message that they can hear us? Sound is good. Yep. Awesome. Great. So my name is Leah and I am joined by Roy and Jessie, who are also poly, and we want to share with you some interesting things tonight. But before we begin, I want to ask you folk to look around the software where you're using Zoom. You will have a chat room and you would have the opportunity to ask us questions anonymously as well in the Q&A section. So do take advantage of that. What we'll do is we'll go through the talk that we've prepared for you, but we'll make it as much interactive as possible, and we'll save some time at the end where you can ask us questions that will be addressed as much as time allows us. So I can see people joining more and more, and I will check how we're doing on Facebook. Please note, I am not going to be monitoring anything on Facebook. So if people have registered here on Zoom, you can message us, etc. But on Facebook, sorry, not going to be paying attention there. Okay, so I am Leah, and I'm a psychologist and a sex and relationships educator for adults. And I am also poly. That's why I'm intrigued by this topic. That's why I invest time in learning about it. And I'm so happy to have met Roy, who is also an educator. I labeled you just now to give you some form and shape into people's heads as to what's your role here. But please introduce yourself, Roy, and tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hi Leah, it's great to be here again. I really enjoyed our last workshop last month. And yes, so just very briefly, my name is Roy. I have been polyamorous for about 10 years. And for the last 5 years or so, I've been involved much more in education, in facilitating workshops and talks about polyamory, as well as other topics like kink and radical honesty. And over the last few months over lockdown, I've kind of formalized some of my thoughts into basically working with people to help them conduct an ethical non-monogamy and kind of coach and advise people on their relationships in ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. So as part of that, I want to get as much knowledge out there to people, and then yeah, and basically reach as many people as possible outside of the, I guess, sex positive bubble that is kind of immersed in this information. But I think there's a wider range of people that, just like me when I was monogamous but frustrated, that just didn't even know that the polyamory existed, didn't know what it was, and I wish I had somebody kind of showing me that and explaining that it's a very valid relationship dynamic and life choice. Somebody on the chat I just noticed asked if you can tell people which Facebook group it is shown on live.
So it's on Sex Positive UK. This is a group I run, and I invite everybody who's interested in joining it because other Sexperts also advertise their events there. So that's where it's streamed, and also my page, lifesexperts.com, or just put Life Sexperts on Facebook and you'll find it.
Cool.
Thanks for drawing attention to that, Roy.
So yes, and today also Jessie joining us. Jessie's my partner.
Welcome, Jessie.
I am Jessie, and I have been polyamorous for 2 years now, and I'm not I don't have a long list of things to kind of, not an educator, but experience polyamory every day.
And crucially experience jealousy.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yes.
Because I experience, jealousy. I don't really know what the scale is. I was going to say like a lot of jealousy, but I don't really know what that would exactly be. But I don't experience a tiny amount of jealousy. You know, it's noticeable. It's something that I have to work on with my partners in order for me to do polyamory, but that I've been able to do that and be very happy in polyamory. So I'm here to tell you that it is possible.
Awesome. Well, you guys said how long you've been poly. I've been unaware but practicing poly since I was like a teenager, maybe like since my first or second serious relationship. So like 15, 16 years old. And more openly, it's been at least 8 years now where I'm like, this is how I am, this is what I'm doing in my relationships. If you are not open to poly, we can't move on forward, because I'm not going to lie to anyone about the way I can actually do relationships. So yeah, between us we've got a couple of decades. Yeah, so or more actually, if you count my pre-awareness and openness ages. But yeah, all right. Well, today's topic is really big, and it's jealousy. Jessie said she feels a lot of it. I have no normal feeling of jealousy, as most people would experience it. What about you, Roy? How are you dealing with jealousy?
I would say that I've never been a jealous person, even at times where I had very long-term monogamous partners and relationships. I didn't really experience it in the way that I see, say, typically shown in the media or in books, etc. I don't feel like thinking about my partner with another man or something, or another person triggered any kind of like really negative emotions in me. I definitely had strong reaction if somebody lied or cheated, but I think it's more about the kind of like loss of trust, and that's a hurt. But I definitely do experience certain emotions that are grouped under a jealousy umbrella term, and we will go into that a little bit more. But you know, for me, I think sometimes it's like FOMO, just fear of missing out on something fun that the partner is doing with somebody else, or kind of a bit of envy of what they've got and that I don't. And and I do experience that, and it's a process that happens inside me, and I'm aware of it. What I discovered for myself is that it is always a positive development to be aware of that, to kind of experience it and then sit with it and understand why it's there, right? And for me, it kind of often serves as a breakthrough into figuring out what it is that I actually need. Because if I do feel that somebody's having a lot of fun with something that they're doing and I'm not doing it, then maybe I need to have a similar kind of fun, or maybe I need to organize something else. Maybe that's going to awaken a need in me that I didn't think about before. Or maybe I'm insecure about something, and then I can, work on that. So I see it as a very positive thing.
I think you bring a hugely valid point here. We do experience some sorts of emotional turbulations when partners are gone and potentially on a date, or that they're sleeping with someone right now. The problem may often be more around how you feel about you not doing anything, or the fact that they may be doing something that you wish you have done with them, or an insecurity. So this is a learning point, as you said, to bring this forward and brew over it in order to assimilate what actually is happening for you in terms of the experience. Is it just pure jealousy, or is it something else that you can take away and think over and actually start changing the way you process that into your relationships?
I don't subscribe to this idea that jealousy is an emotion in itself, or that pure jealousy is actually a tangible thing, or essentially we say a lot of times we're jealous because we're experiencing some kind of fear. But depending on where that comes from, the way you deal with it will be totally different. So it can be sometimes, I think, a bit distracting for people to just kind of, so I'm jealous and I need to just like treat that jealousy, because automatically the first solution is stop doing what you're doing to make me feel jealous, right? It's like to the partner. It's like passing it on to the other person to stop what they've been doing so I feel safer. And then you're losing out. I mean, sometimes if it's a very dramatic and like strong emotion that's sometimes can be kind of debilitating or kind of paralyzing, maybe in the moment that is a needed solution. I'm not going to say that every time you have to just like accept what the partner is doing and never like, you know, kind of question it. But there's always an underlying need. And by refusing to look at it, you are missing out on an opportunity to develop yourself, to get better at understanding yourself, and to be stronger, to grow and strengthen as a person. So some of the fears that I think are included in this overall kind of umbrella term are things about just, you know, afraid your partner that you will lose them, that they will find somebody better. Feeling like you're lacking validation from your partner. Possibly some insecurities that are related to your childhood or to other relationships. So projecting on the partner something that you've experienced in a past relationship. As well as we mentioned before, missing out, being left out. So again, it's really important to try and narrow it down.
I'm very much supporter of the idea that you need to kind of like look into what's happening for you rather than just go, they made me feel, you know, you have responsibility over your feelings and you need to look at what in the circumstances has led you to feel that way. But you do need to take ownership and understand your role into what you're experiencing. So yeah, super valid.
The only way, not the only way, but the way to sort of constructively talk to your partner about jealousy is to try and leave out accusations kind of as much as possible, because it's not helpful to say, you know, you've made me feel jealous, or, you know, you've done this thing which has hurt me in an accusatory way, because then it just puts the other person on the defensive, because a lot of times it won't be on purpose. And I think it just needs to be a kind of constructive approach. You approach it together like a team. So kind of, if you are jealous about something and you can bring this to your partner, kind of, so I had this reaction when you did this thing, and that made me feel X and Y, and actually it made me realize that I have this insecurity because I feel like she is way more intelligent than me, and actually you being with someone who's got a PhD in physics actually makes me worry that you won't be interested in me, in my intellect anymore. And so you could kind of bring the reactions and the insight to the partner, who can then, you know, offer reassurance, you know, or
so
that way.
If you I don't know if people have heard of NVC, nonviolent communication, but it provides some techniques and tools to go through this process of recognizing the emotions, identifying the need, and then knowing how to ask your partner for, or let them know how they can help you as well. So in this example, for example, you know, an attentive partner that's aware of what the partner is going through may not need this, but it's also for the sake of clarity. You can be saying, you know, what I need is reassurance. What I need is to know that, you know, like the reasons why you are with me and that other person isn't actually a threat. I think it's valid to also ask for what you need.
Indeed. So jealousy, to summarize briefly, is not necessarily a bad thing, because there's this idea in the poly community for some people that if you feel jealous and stuff, you're not evolved enough, or that you've not reached the point of feeling so secure with yourself that you just don't experience it, and you're not immune, basically, or you're not fit to be poly.
Right. And I think in my case, it can be that I have underlying insecurities and that I'm not sort of secure enough in myself to never feel jealousy. But I don't think you need to be this perfectly evolved Zen person who's done years and years of work on themselves before you can think about polyamory. You know, I think as long as you're willing to put the work in and really understand and acknowledge where these emotions and feelings come from, then it shouldn't be a boundary of being polyamorous.
I feel that maybe for the sake of clarity and to set the stage, it would be, and I saw some of the Q&A happening, if we just explain about how our relationship works and what's the dynamic, that might be helpful. Do you want to go?
How our relationship works.
Yeah.
So we don't practice hierarchical polyamory. So we're not a kind of primary partnership, and we don't have kind of primary or secondary partnerships. When we first got together, I had another partner and Roy had another partner around the same time as starting dating me. Kind of my situation's changed a bit and I only am kind of seriously seeing Roy at the minute, but we'll see other people, and we just try and put as little limitation on that as possible. For lockdown, we've moved in together. We weren't living together before, and we won't live together after. At some point at some point I'll move out. But yeah, so it could possibly be described as relationship anarchy, or maybe solo poly. I'm not sure. There are quite a few terms which have overlapping definitions.
So for us, there hasn't been a need for very kind of clear and strict agreements. The only agreements we have is to be totally open and honest with each other, tell each other everything, but obviously we consider what the other person wants to know, how much detail they want to know about it. And try to kind of schedule things that we want for ourselves in advance, so we know that that's kind of saved in the diary.
And I think sexual health as well, sort of.
Yeah.
Condom usage,
So we don't use condoms, and we agree that with new partners we would use condoms. If that is something that over time might change, then we will discuss it.
Well, I just need to highlight here that this is Rory and Jessie's way of doing poly, but realistically there are so many ways.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my cat destroying my couch. So there are so many ways of actually practicing poly that are suitable for some people but not suitable for others. So for instance, pate. So for instance, the anarchy type of relationships in polyamory would not suit me at all. I prefer to have that kind of primary relationship and then other partners that I'm somewhat involved with or not much, etc. So it is very difficult to just say to someone, do that, because it won't suit everybody. And oftentimes it takes experimentation, or at least very deep introspection as to what would work for you and what wouldn't.
Yeah.
There's
many ways to do poly as there are poly people. And somebody asked about open relationships. I would say that, from my understanding, in an open relationship, you do have a primary partner, and then you're open to sexual experiences with others. but you generally avoid having emotional connections with them and romantic relationships in open relationships. Polyamory is the relationships can be whatever they are, whatever they evolve into, including could be just sexual, could be romantic, could be a mixture or none or either. So it's what I love about it is that it allows you to explore whatever naturally happens with a person without having to sacrifice it for the sake of another relationship.
But that's your well, they're different. This is a very complex topic because everybody has their own idea of terminology. And then there's on this website, it says this is open relationships and this is how they deviate from polyamory. So to me, open relationships is just the umbrella term above the different types of relationships. Whether there's love or not, it's an open relationship in the sense that you are open to other people. Whether there'll be amory, love, into them, that's very different, but that's my interpretation. As I see open relationship as an umbrella term, and everything else, anarchy, poly, it's just something that you would describe that would be more specific to your way of doing it. But again, the whole branch is so different. Like if you speak to people from the United States, West Coast to East Coast would have ideas, and then in Europe, etc. So I need to highlight that. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has the same idea of terminology.
Sure. The one of the things that I wanted to touch on, I want to also touch on the questions people are asking, because they're actually quite good questions. Yeah. Is that in order to understand, in order to kind of resolve issues of jealousy, it's important to really understand what's happening to us when we experience these emotions. Mm. So sitting with the emotion and understanding what it feels like in our body is really important.
I think that's easy to say though, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to do. Mm-hmm. Because those feelings, like you said, jealousy, it can trigger these intense feelings, which can be like fear and anger. They're kind of very scary emotions. But I think it's also practice of kind of feeling the jealousy and just kind of noticing it. But this is why you have to be able to trust your partner kind of intellectually as well, because in the moments in jealousy, it can feel huge. It can feel terrifying. But if you know that you can trust your partner to support you and to have your best interest at heart, and to want the best for the relationship, then I think it's easier to just kind of stay with those uncomfortable feelings to really get past the initial flare of discomfort to get to what's underneath.
Mm.
Yeah, and understanding your each other's triggers would be super important if you want to bring up a very difficult subject, like an anger over something that your partner has done, or feeling insecure about their other relationship, for example. How you bring it up, what is the state that you're both in, that's going to be super important. If I, for example, know that, my partner will clam up and just kind of look down if I raise my voice, then if I do that when I'm angry, nothing will get be resolved, right? She will learn that she needs to either kind of hide things more better, or I don't know, or just avoid me when I'm angry, and kind of just try to avoid the situation altogether and never discuss it. So I need to be aware of my own triggers and of my partner's. In that situation, just take some time off, go for a walk, go into your room, calm down, know how to speak about it, and approach her with the desire to discuss I'm giving us an example, with the desire to discuss an issue, not the whole relationship because of one issue, right? So if you've done something that triggered an emotion in me, we discuss like how I'm feeling about what you did. I'm not accusing you that you did it in order to kind of hurt me or something, or to make me feel bad, because I trust you that you wouldn't consciously want to make me feel bad.
Yeah.
If I suspect or I believe that she wants to make me feel bad, I'm in the wrong relationship. If I'm afraid to bring something up with her because I'm worried about how she will react, I'm probably in the wrong relationship. Because there's some other issues of toxicity and inability to communicate that have to be addressed before you even go into jealousy.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between knowing that if your partner's had a particularly stressful day at work, or they've just had an argument with a friend or another partner, that those are situations where maybe like you could wait for another day to bring it up. But that's very different to never knowing if this is safe to bring up to the person, because, you know, they could have any sort of massive reaction. If you're kind of walking on eggshells, basically, around bringing up jealousy or bringing up issues with your partner, that's sort of crosses that line into a different problem.
I think it's also important to say that sometimes people are battling their own demons, and giving far less credit to the openness of their partners. And they may feel like they're walking on eggshells, but they may be actually very afraid to bring it up, thinking, based on past experiences or something else, if I say this, my partner is gonna go crazy on me, and that may not be the case. And that is the time when you're deciding to open up, you need to also understand your own baggage and your own ideas of how people react to you being open, honest, forthcoming, etc. Because we are often so scared that we'll be rejected that we don't even dare be honest. You know, this is why people lie, because it's easier to lie and hopefully not risk it that much than actually be opened. So yes, it's really important to create a safe space as a partner where your partner feels like they can come up with anything, bring it into a safe space, and receive the adult communication, understanding, introspection, and all of that. But it's also important to know that sometimes we are just those small children that have big bags of baggage behind us, and we fight our own demons when we're not speaking about things. So this is very important also to keep in mind.
Yeah.
I think you can't just go from like 0 to 100. You're not in kind of discussing jealousy and being super open and a fantastic communicator with your partner, especially if you've had, like you said, if you've got baggage, if you've had relationships in the past where it's been difficult to talk to a partner, and so you kind of learn that openness isn't okay. It's not going to just be possible overnight to change those habits, but to just kind of start small. You don't have to jump straight into tackling the huge issues straight away, but just kind of, like, everything takes practice. And I think being open and honest, like having that style of communication with your partner is also one of those things.
Yes, that's very right. What else do we bring on to today?
So I wanted to just again go back to why we're having these feelings, right? And why in the moment it's very hard to think logically about resolving it, or in a healthy, non-violent kind of communication way. our brains have evolved from reptilian brains, and they're overlaid with a mammalian brain system and a human brain system. But when we're facing with a crisis that we don't know how to deal with, we don't know how to solve from our own experience, then oftentimes our mammalian or reptilian brain will take over. And the mammalian brain is basically concerned with instincts of survival, of the basic needs. The reptilian brain is just is totally about instinct of like fight, flight, or freeze. And when we're facing a shock, something that we didn't experience or we didn't expect, and we've never, and haven't had that emotion before, the worst case scenario is we get into this instinct, and the first response might be like just to leave everything and run away, or to fight, or do nothing. That's another valid instinct in this case. So there's no magic bullet to deal with it, but it's important to understand it, and it's important to be aware that if we're doing anything in a relationship, and in an open relationship, poly relationship, any kind of ethical non-monogamy, we are often going to be dealing with emotions that are new to us, with experiences that we've not had before, and we don't, because we never did them before, we don't know how we'll react. It's all very well and good to say, I'm perfectly happy for you to go on a date and just call me to let me know if you're coming home or not, kind of thing. But when she's out on the date, I'm like sitting there thinking, oh my God, what if like she doesn't come back and she doesn't call me, or she forgets, and did I do the right thing? What if she falls in love with them? All this kind of like crazy thoughts are coming into the head that are not logical, but they're there, right? So we want to build a structure using different kind of communication techniques. We want to build trust in the relationship. We want to be able to feel enabled to talk to our partners when we do have insecurities, and to know that they will contain it and not like push it back on us or tell us, well, it's your problem, deal with it, kind of thing. Even though that may be true, it's not necessarily what we need to hear when we are being vulnerable. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Specifically about like how a partner should respond if like you come and say, I have insecurities or I'm jealous about something, and how that is going to help kind of diffuse the situation.
I think it's important to be kind of met with openness. But what I appreciate from you when I bring these things to you is that I also I trust you to try your best to understand where I'm coming from and where these feelings are coming from. But I also trust you to stick to your own boundaries if you think that, if I come up with a suggestion for something to do to help the situation, you won't agree to something that is against your own boundaries just to kind of placate me. So I think the kind of openness to genuinely try and understand where the partner is coming from and those feelings, but also I don't feel like you're making my feelings your responsibility, but I feel like you kind of come to me as a team to solve it, for you to help me solve it myself,
Yeah.
Because it's not helpful if you say, oh, I'm really insecure about this thing that happened, and then the partner just sort of, I don't know, fall apart or like bend over backwards to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm a terrible person, I don't know, I never want that to happen again, I'll never see that person again. That's not very helpful for the poly relationship. You're not going to learn anything from that, and the relationship isn't going to get stronger that way.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a band-aid.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you, by bringing what you have experienced as jealousy, only punishes the other person and limits their freedoms that you have already agreed on in a way. So it makes you feel guilty for them having to now restrict, not see someone, change, or whatever it is, whereas this may not have been necessary. It could have been dealt in a different way.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier about kind of the thoughts you might have when your partner is out on a date, and I mentioned before that is that oftentimes our reaction is based on past trauma and experiences we had in our relationship, in other relationships, that we kind of project on the present relationship. So obviously, if you've been hurt before by somebody cheating on you or doing something that they weren't supposed to, and then your jealousy now is because you kind of like had that experience, you're kind of prepared for that happening again, you want to protect yourself. I think it's unfair to necessarily put that on any new relationship you kind of start. So the work there is to communicate that you have that fear, that you have certain abandonment issues or whatever they are, and together discuss some mechanism to help mitigate that, and over time get out of that mindset. And maybe that requires some more regular check-ins, right? Some more validation. There's different ways that you can achieve that. But leaving that unsaid, but only then, because I've had experience as well before when a partner projected things that other people did on me and preemptively kind of found ways to blame me for stuff, rather than me being aware that this is what happened before. They have that insecurities. We need to basically be a lot more cautious when we step by step kind of like deal with that. And if I knew that, maybe it would have been the wrong relationship for me because I didn't want to compromise. But that's something that you need to know in advance as well. Cool.
So to sum it up, I like summing things up. To sum it up, it's about being there for each other, problem solving, holding each other in a very respectful way where you're not bending over, but you're not also leaving the other person with, well, that's your problem to solve. It's us, we're in this together. Very popular saying now. And we're working to understand each other, understand what works best for all of us in this relationship. Yeah. Okay. We keep getting questions into
them as well.
the box. So people are asking things like, how do you bring up a partner when you have had sex for the first time with a new person? Do you even bring it up? And then someone else says there are different approaches to sharing details of relationships or encounters with partners. How do the speakers do this? This is a question about confidentiality between everyone involved.
They're kind of related as well.
Very similar questions, yeah. So how do you deal with that?
I haven't had the experience where I've had sex with somebody who's then said, please don't tell anybody that we had sex. I don't think I would want to have sex with somebody where that was a stipulation that I couldn't tell anyone that we'd done it.
If they ask you not to talk about the details of what you did.
Yeah, I know. I would respect. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, divulge the details, but just the act that we had sex.
I'm under the belief that first of all, be as ethical as you can all the time, but that might look different for different people, and obviously people's ethics can be different. So for that reason, you also want to communicate as much as you can. If you as a person are private and don't want people to know very much about your sexual kinks or whatever it is, it's your responsibility to then communicate that to partners, to ask them not to discuss it with, say, other partners. I'm generally quite open with what I share, but I make sure that people that I'm with also are aware of that. Obviously, I'm not going to go into anything that is theirs, but if it's my experience with them and it's a happy experience, I may recount it to another partner. But if they ask me not to, I won't. The basic things of like, I had sex with them, or or if I know in advance I'm going to have sex with them, that's usually something that we do talk about, again, because it's about time planning and management, especially now that we live together, and it's also about sexual health.
And also, yeah, I don't like surprises, really. Sometimes you kind of can't help it, and like, that's fine, I'll have to deal with it. But if we can kind of avoid surprises, it's just more difficult for me if, you know, if Roy or a partner, if I think they're going on, I don't know, a walk in the park, and then it's like, oh, actually, I went back to their place and we had sex. And that's fine, they have the freedom to do that. But just for some reason, I like my expectations to match what sort of happens. It's kind of, I think because my feelings can be quite strong, if I know that, I don't know, that sex could happen, it's easier to think, okay, sex could happen, it might not. And then kind of a few days later or whenever it happens, it's like, okay, sex did happen, that's fine. Rather than kind of all at once, sex happened. And again, it's not the end of the world, it's just kind of different levels of, or different intensities of the emotions that brings up.
I think we're different in that. I mean, I wouldn't really mind, and you know, I'm happy if there was sex, or if there wasn't, as long as the experience was good and she's happy, that's fine. I enjoy hearing details, and I'd like to know that she's had a good time. But I'm being aware of her insecurities, or her kind of like concerns in terms of like how those emotions might hit her. I can take steps to make it easier without necessarily changing anything in what I do.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's important to note that I would not kind of be angry if you hadn't kind of warned me that you might have sex with somebody and then have sex with them, because like things change and you might, you know, not think they're gonna have sex and then they do, and I don't want to impact Roy's kind of relationships and to put limits on that. So even though it would make it a bit harder for me when I find out, I think it's important to sort of not be angry. Yeah.
I think one of the things is that it's also an option to have an agreement that you don't discuss details, and just stay with how was last night, good, okay, moving on, rather than going into details, because sometimes jealousy can drive people into very detailed questions that do not help them at all, you know, and then they can go like, well, I just want to know everything, but then that's not really helpful for them, their feelings, their partner, the relationship, anybody else involved, because it may get really messy if they just overreact sometimes when they're in the heat of passion, and they may go like, you had anal with her or with him or whatever, and it goes. So sometimes we need to know our own limits, what works for us, what works for them, and also understand how far we want to know. Because I've had partners who just did not want to know. And I was like, okay, well, don't ask, don't tell. And there will be times that I would, on purpose, not tell them where I'm going or who I'm hanging out with when they say, let's meet up on Wednesday or whatever. And I say, I can't. They go like, why? I'm like, I just can't. Because I know that if I tell them about every single time that I go out with guys, then they would feel horrible. And if I told them every time that I went out with friends, but not when I'm with guys, it would just be like, well, she's not telling me she's with such and such, therefore she is with someone that she's sleeping with. So that kind of balance also needs to occur if your partner is not quite happy with knowing, or if you are not happy with knowing.
Yeah. If I'm not happy with knowing the details, I need to also be totally fine with not knowing a lot of details, including, as you said, even if you're going out with friends, because my request to not know means that I can't just like figure it out by working out your schedule. Exactly. So I have to accept that I will not know quite a bit about your life. Personally, for me, that wouldn't work, but I mean, it's a valid choice to have that kind of arrangement. What you mentioned about the discussing all the details, the motivation for wanting to know the details is very important.
Yes.
Because some people want to know in order to have some kind of control over that situation. And that in itself is something that needs to be examined and like looked at. Why do you need to know all the details just so you somehow have a picture of what your partner did with somebody else? It's not really your business. And it's important to understand where is that coming from.
Yeah. Sometimes though, it could be very healthy and very much like bringing new energy into the relationship, because you can come back, you still may be very horny, and your partner may say, well, how was it, what did you do with them, etc., and that could just kind of like throw another spark at you guys, and then you're having rampant sex into the house, like you're just going crazy because you just had that intriguing moment where you're sharing what has happened. So I've had these situations as well where I've been in an open relationship, I come back or see the partner again, how was it, what happened, I give them a little bit of details, not everything of course, and then we're like onto it, happy, having great sex, because this new energy has come in and made us more enthusiastic about each other. In that moment, we're aroused by the fact that we're talking about sex. We're aroused by knowing that the other partner wants us and they're wanted, etc. So it piles up and you can enjoy it. So as Rory said, motivation of wanting to know is the key that you need to have in order to understand whether it's actually a good idea to share and whether it's not a bad idea to draw a boundary and an information limitation. Yeah. We're having so many questions.
Yeah, it's quite a few.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
just book schedules and just thinking shared Google calendars are the way to do it. Because then you can see when people are busy but you don't necessarily see the details, so
you know they don't have time for you.
Yeah, you know that they don't have time. Again, like maybe they're out with a friend, maybe they could be doing anything, but that's not time with you. So yeah, Google Calendars has been very useful.
And it's also helpful because I think especially if you're somebody that needs quite a lot of frequent validation and like regular contact, then if you're messaging your partner and they don't come back, they don't reply, right? And maybe they've seen it, maybe they've not seen it, but like they're not getting a response, and you're starting to feel, well, what are they doing that they're not responding? Like if I know she's on a date, I kind of assume, I expect that she wouldn't reply to me. If I don't know what she's doing, then I'm like wondering, why isn't she? Ultimately, I mean, with the Google Calendar option, if it's blocked, of course, I kind of understand she's doing something else. But if you are somebody that has some kind of has some anxiety or it has an anxious attachment style, it's worth also like communicating that in advance and agreeing that we will have some check-ins, for example. I know that there was one time where you were on a weekend with your other partner and I messaged you and you didn't come back for 24 hours. And I had some anxiety around like not hearing it all, even though I knew that you probably are busy, but it's like, I thought you probably, at some point we'll be checking your messages. So I realized there was some anxiety. Again, she did nothing wrong. We never agreed on that before that, but it kind of for me, it kind of meant that we should probably just address that and communicate how to avoid kind of like this anxiety coming up for me, because it's not rational, but it was there. And if I have absolutely zero idea what's going on, I could get also a little bit worried. So at the time we agreed that if it's something urgent, I'll send her a text message. If I'm sending it in WhatsApp or Signal, it's not going to be urgent. So if she doesn't come back to it because she's busy, that's fine. But if it's like something urgent, like life and death, I'll message or I'll call, so.
Yeah. I think it's important to also know why you're anxious. Whether I personally would not get anxious if my partner is with someone else. But if they don't reply for 24 hours, I'll be like, did they die? Like this is just me being super pessimistic about certain things, but I would just think they have probably died. I wouldn't be anxious of them, not caring about what message I send them enough to respond. I would be like, have they gotten injured? Maybe something has happened. So for me, for my anxiety would be to just send them a question and say, if you're alive, please respond, at least with a thumbs up or something, so that I don't worry that they have died, But again, you need to understand, as Roy said, is this urgent? Is this a message of, hey, I'm sulking, I'm at home, I just miss you, and I want to chat to you. I know that this is your weekend away with your other partner, but I actually feel like I need you now. Or is it more like, hey, are you okay? Are you alive? Or they pushed you off a cliff or something, You never know. You annoyed them. But that's the thing. Know why the anxiety is coming up, and also address it. If it's more around, they have forgotten me, I don't mean anything to them, and then cry me a river type of response. Or is it more like, I'm actually worried about this person's well-being, because they usually respond super quick. Be aware of where you're coming from when you are worried or anxious or whatever it is.
Yeah. And also, probably it's a good idea to have an emotional support network. Like with poly, the fact you have other partners is great, but sometimes you need a friend rather than like a romantic or sexual partner. I mean, if my partner was out with somebody and I was feeling jealous about that in some way, and I know that she's not doing anything wrong, and I know that we've talked about it, and it's just that I have an insecurity, right? Then it could be helpful for me to then just call up a friend, platonic friend, that knows me well, and just kind of talk it out, talk it through, and hear the voice of reason, or hear like somebody mirroring to me what's going on, just like they can see me and give me this kind of mirror and this kind of like reflection of like, okay, so you're insecure about this and this and this and this. Let's like talk through this, and like just talking it out and sharing with somebody and feeling validated often like helps.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that point. I think someone mentioned like, what do you do if you have all these feelings, but it's all a bit jumbled up and messy, and you kind of don't really have much to bring to your partner right now. And I think if that was me, that's usually when I would call a friend. Do one of a few things, kind of call a friend, write my feelings down, just things to kind of do to sort those emotions out, like a sounding board. And it's why it's a good thing to sort of get a bit into the poly community, to kind of get friends, like make friends who understand the sort of poly situation. Because I would first of all try and call a friend and to just kind of have a rant and be like, am I going crazy? Have they been a dick, or am I being a dick? Sort of with a friend, you don't have to be so kind of put together. You can just be like, oh, I'm so mad right now, and just kind of express it a bit more freely, without kind of trying your best not to hurt that other person. And then if a friend isn't available, then I would just like write it all down, and then kind of get my thoughts more in order, so that I don't just kind of word vomit on my partner.
And in relation to what we said earlier, someone mentions they would feel uncomfortable, the idea that they would have to lie in order to meet someone's request. I'm guessing that is in relation to what I said about a partner that didn't want to know about me seeing other people. And that's you're right. If you're not comfortable to, in that case with me and him, it wasn't about lying. I wasn't telling him, oh, I'm seeing let's say Anna, and then I'm actually with Alan, because he can bump into me in town or something. Oxford is pretty tiny city, so I wouldn't lie. I would just not tell him, which some people equate to lying, but in that case I wouldn't, because we had that agreement. But it's up to you what you feel comfortable with, and if you don't feel comfortable with don't ask, don't tell, and hiding parts of what you're doing when with whom, then you would not be suited for a relationship with a person who can't handle you not telling them stuff, or rather telling them stuff. So it's again a boundary that you would know for yourself, and you would know if you meet someone that wants to run it that way, for you to say, actually, that ain't gonna work for me, and that's fine, and you can move on. You don't have to. There's a good thing about poly. In monogamous relationships, you have to, the idea is that you have to deal with so much compromise that you just have to fit in a tiny box of expectations. Whereas with poly, you are more aware of what works for you, and you feel more liberated, if I may say it that way. Like even in a monogamous relationship, you can still be like, I ain't doing this or that. But it's the liberation that comes with polyamory and open relationships that's different. So definitely would say, be aware of what works for you, and when it's not a compatible match in that respect or another, and it's non-negotiable, then you need to ask yourself, is this worth it, or do I need to move on?
Well,
and I was going to move point, so if you want to say.
Yeah, I wanted to just briefly on that point, that I had to ask myself when I was considering my own ethics with regards to ethical monogamy, just ask myself this question: if I was with a partner in a hotel room, whatever, after sex, and she got a call from her husband or her live-in partner or something, and she was basically telling to him, I'm with friends in the bar or something, or like lying to him, it could be because he doesn't want to know details. It could be because she's cheating. I have no way of knowing what it is. And would I feel comfortable with that? That's my question. Personally, I wouldn't, and therefore I wouldn't start a relationship with somebody who needed a DADT, kind of don't ask, don't tell type arrangement. But that's just personally for me, and because I just wouldn't be comfortable in that situation.
And again, that's down to personal choice and how you feel about it, so it's figuring out who you are, where you stand, and what you're cool with and what you're not. And in terms of so there's more comment. Lack of transparency feels similar to lying to me, but I appreciate we're all different. You're trying to honor your partner's wishes. Such a hard decision. It is, and it's difficult as well to manage how much information you give them and whatnot. But for this person, I really like them. We had a great thing together, and to me, it was a tiny sacrifice to not be fully transparent. I like coming back to my partner and saying, this happened, I met this person and we had this, because for me, that is exciting. I love sharing. I'm a sharer. I would share my food. I would share my sex toys. I am a sharer. I love coming to people and being like, let's share. So that was the difficult part for me in that relationship, that I couldn't bring that sexual energy and enthusiasm and excitement with my partner. But what we had and the person that he was more important to me than sharing that aspect of me and my experiences with him, because I had so much more that I wanted to share. It was a worthy sacrifice. I'll put it that, because I don't really feel like I sacrificed too much, because what I was getting from him was very much super precious to me. So sparing his feelings, making sure that he's more comfortable with the arrangement that we had was good, because he's never done poly before. It was very new to him. He was very much in love with me, and he made that sacrifice, to dive into something that was so foreign to him. So again, it's very difficult to decide what would happen when you meet a person that says, I do not want to know. If you really like them, maybe you'd be like, okay, yeah, I would save you, spare you, whatever, make you feel comfortable. Yeah. And we've got people asking, someone saying, I'm a single parent to a 2-year-old toddler, and I would like to join a poly community. Where do I start, please? And we've had this in the Q&A as well.
Yeah, I answered it just with a link, because it's not specifically our topic, but if people message through Facebook, I can share some communities and stuff like that, and depending on where they are. But I don't think it's really the right topic right now.
Yeah, briefly though, I would say try FetLife and checking out the events there for poly people and communities and groups, and also Facebook groups as a start. But as Roy said, there's plenty of places, and depending on
FetLife is really only if you're kinky as well. If you're poly but not kinky, avoid it. It's quite full on.
I wouldn't say it's that much of a thing. I've met people that are purely poly and are on FetLife just because there's huge overlap in the communities, and
I'm just saying that the images and content that's there can be quite explicit and extreme, and if you're don't want to see that, then you probably wouldn't want to be on that network. So.
I guess if you're anti-kink.
Not anti, but just like if it's not anti, but if you're if certain images of torture and piercing things like that, trigger you, you may not want to be there. That's all.
Most of the time, you don't really see images of torture there.
No, I don't know.
And that sounded very kink negative, Roy. I'm gonna call you out here. That sounded very kink negative.
I'm the last person you can accuse of being kink negative. But I'm also aware that for some people, these things are a trigger. That's all. The images and the descriptions. And I think that, I'm very pro-kink. And I think that, yes, and there's a lot of overlap between kink and BDSM and poly. But also there are many BDSM kind of DS relationships that are extremely monogamous because of the inherent kind of power dynamics there. So it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah. What kind of other questions do we have?
Are you going from the top? So lots of things early on. I think we kind of discussed that. Yeah. What are things your partner can do?
I'm looking at the bottom. You're looking at the top.
I think if you're on a date night together, do you have a no-go rule? I think it's like if we're going to a party, are we staying together, or do we see other people while we're out? I think that's what it means.
I think that's something to be discussed. Like there'll definitely be date nights or times where, like my partner is with me. If that's what we've agreed on, this is kind of our night. So sort of, I would be massively pissed off, or it wouldn't be okay for me in that situation if they were to say, well, unless it was kind of extraordinary circumstances. But for them, if we went on a specific date night where we're like, this is our night, we go out to a club and they meet someone else and they're like, oh, actually, I want to go home with them. But well, no, because obviously you can do that, but then tomorrow, I'm leaving you. It kind of.
You have a boundary.
That's sort of a boundary. If we've agreed that it's our night together, unless something, crazy happens, unless it's something very like understandable that person needs to leave. Obviously, they can leave, but
generally, I would say from experience, we haven't had any problems with that. As in, like, even though we may have met other people, if we agreed with coming home together, we would come home together.
Yeah.
Also because you left your stuff at my place.
Yeah.
But the point is to manage expectations. If somebody has an issue with expectations and with like surprises, that's an important thing to know. If I knew there was somebody else at the party that I wanted to kind of connect with, I would tell Jessie beforehand, so she's prepared. If I didn't know and I met somebody there by accident that I wasn't expecting, my responsibility or my priority, not as a rule, but as the agreement we had, is I am with Jessie. If I feel strongly that it's somebody that I may not have any other opportunity to see or to kind of connect with, then I will check in with Jessie and have a discussion to see, are you okay with that? And I think it's really important when you're asking a question like that to not have any set expectations of what the outcome is. And then you won't be disappointed, right? Because if you know that what you have an agreement, I'm asking a question, I think it's important to communicate that I'm not expecting a particular answer from you that will suit my needs or what I'm wanting. I want you to just speak from exactly your place of need and what you would be happy with. You may have lots of fun with your friends right now, and if I go away for an hour, you'll be totally happy. And if that's how you feel, great, we're all happy. But I'm not going to be disappointed if your feeling right now is actually you want us to hang out together, because that's what we agreed to.
It's all about agreements and circumstances and communication, to summarize. Again, so many wonderful questions, but can we leave this aside and talk about compersion for a bit? Because I am aware we're advancing in time, and this is a hugely important topic to bring up in the conversation about jealousy, because compersion is the opposite of jealousy. And unfortunately, too few people know that word. So I already said it. Compersion is the opposite of jealousy, but what does this entail?
I wouldn't exactly say that compersion is exactly the opposite of jealousy. I actually feel you can feel both at the same time. Compersion is this kind of like internal feeling of happiness when you see your partner being happy, but it's not your doing, it's somebody else that is making them happy. They're in a new relationship energy, or they came back from a great date and they're very kind of full of life, and you're feeling pleasure from that. That's what compersion means. I think that I can still have some insecurities about what they've done with the other partner, or feel some kind of jealousy at the same time as being kind of really genuinely happy for them. So I wouldn't say it's strictly the opposite thing. And it's also kind of a myth that in order to really be poly, you must experience compersion. Over to you.
Yeah, it really frustrates me when you kind of see on like advice forums, and it's like, like compersion equals poly equals compersion, when that's not really something I feel. Like, I can feel glad if a partner is having a good, has had a good time with another partner. I can feel sort of glad for them or relieved, sort of. But I don't feel the emotion of happiness. I don't always feel jealous or negative or insecure, but I don't feel like, it doesn't make me want to jump up and down and go, yay, which is what I do when I'm happy. Yeah. But I don't think that makes me less poly. That's what, I like to think.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's right in terms of again, it's all about these definitions that we would not agree on with everything. And as Jessie said, in some forums and some places it says poly equals compersion. Wait a second, it doesn't always work like that, you know. And there'll be issues with putting things in a very narrow bracket sometimes, and other times expanding the meaning of one term beyond recognition to the point where you're like, can I use this thing for that thing now? Because it used to mean that, but now it means that included, and that it becomes messy. So I would obviously say understand the words as you understand them, understand the context in which you're using them, but don't always buy what it says on the internet in the sense of poly equals compersion, because that may make you feel very insecure whether you can actually be poly if that's the equation, you know. And in that case, if Jessie has legit just bought that sentence, she'll be like, well, I'm not poly then, you know. Where do I find another word that describes my romantic preferences in terms of relationships, etc.? So it is important to take a lot of things with a pinch of salt, and also critical thinking around what that actually says, and is it possible that it's not exactly that way for me or for someone else or in general. So just that note.
Like, can you talk about the sort of the thoughts and the feelings, sort of what you think makes you feel compersion in those moments?
I find that if I love someone, I want them to be as free as they want to be, because I really value my own freedom, and I would want them to want me to be free. So that kind of freedom is expressed in how they react and how they kind of interact with other people as well. So I see their experiences with other people as an expression of their freedom. And it makes me very happy to know that they are pursuing that freedom. So for me, it's, I guess, just an extension of love that I feel for them. And I don't know how other people really experience it, you know, because everybody's emotions are very different. Same way as, like, you know, other people experience jealousy very, very differently. And all those feelings are valid. And as we mentioned, you just want to, like, understand where they're coming from and what you can do with them. Your emotions are always valid. How you act on them is important to get right, because, you know, you can cause additional damage by acting out rather than acting within yourself first, processing it, and then finding a healthy way to express it. Compersion, if allowed to kind of manifest, is I think can be like not an antidote, but one way of, like, feeling better about jealousy. But it's like, oh, well, I do feel a bit of like a contraction here because she's done something with another person when I wasn't there, and I didn't have the chance to also do that with her. And they went on this great trip together, whatever. And I'm like, this is like, feels sucks. But she comes back and she's glowing and tan and happy and has all these great experiences, and she wants to share that energy with me. And that kind of can a little bit make up for that, you know, and like, oh, well, it was worth it, because now I get this like super happy, bouncy Jessie back. So.
Someone says on the chat, can Leah also speak then to her experience with compersion, because it sounded like she has a different experience with it. Thanks. I do seem to have different experience in the sense that when I know that someone that I care about and I'm with is doing something that makes them smile, fills them with joy, they've had a good time with another partner, whatever it is, I feel like, I don't know how to describe a feeling that way, because I just feel super happy for them, in the sense of, yeah, this is how I want your life to be. I want you to live to the fullest. I want to be able to share that happiness with you, and I'm filled with positive feelings. I'm not thinking what I've missed for not being there with them at that time or anything like this. I'm more like, they had a great experience, and I'm so happy that they came back and shared with me. Because for me, the sharing, as I said, I love sharing, and when other people share with me, it feels like this is appreciation. So if they appreciate me and they come back and share with me, that fills me with positive feelings towards them. Like, they care, they know I want to know, and it is just a very kind of positive loop. So, like, for instance, say that you definitely do not like some sort of sweets or whatever, and you see a child that is going crazy about them, you just feel like, oh, it's so amazing for them, they're having their favorite thing. But you don't miss what they're having. You just don't have feelings towards their sweets or whatever it is. So you just feel super happy that they're happy, full stop. And that's how I feel. I don't feel like I want to have it, because if they had an ice cream that I absolutely love, you know, if it's that case and I was like, oh, I wish I had an ice cream too, that's still part of it, you know, but it doesn't cloud my feeling for them of like, yes, that's awesome, you know. And them sharing the story, the experience, is for me the equal of sharing the ice cream. Like, I can't have my own ice cream, I didn't have my own trip, etc., without partner. In the case of Roy, as his story went, but I'm getting what I could from this experience because they shared, and that fills me with joy. So this is my experience with compersion and how I feel about it. Yeah. But again, as Roy said, all feelings are valid. What you do with them is different story. And there is no one way, no one right way of doing things, because different people need different things. Okay, we've got some more comments. I'm loving the term compersion. My partner is my best friend. I get really excited when I see him happy, like I would any friend. The best part is I get to spend my life with him, living together and sharing these experiences. Yeah, just like this person. It is that kind of feeling. Someone else says, I'd love to hear from a someone say this for me.
Hierarchical.
Yes. Poly couple in a future session. Well, I do hierarchical poly, but this session is more around jealousy and stuff, and happily we could do another one in the future that would tackle this hierarchical, killing me, this word, poly. Wow, there's so many questions still that we haven't addressed, and we've got 10 minutes to go. Roy, is there anything else that you want to share that we have missed out on from the things that you've come prepared with, or do you want us to move to questions?
Yeah, I think we can try and answer as many questions as we can in the next 10 minutes. And also, I would just say that if we miss out on anything, I'd be happy to answer them privately if people want to write through my Facebook page, and I can give some, some quick answers there. But let's, we can try. It'll be helpful, I think, for the group to answer them here if we can.
Yeah, sure thing.
Jessie, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a question that you would like to start with? Because we've got plenty.
Well, somebody asked why this couple were chosen to join, and share, please.
Well, me and Roy have known each other for 10 months now or something. We've collaborated before. We seem to be working good together. We have different experiences, as Roy is in a non-hierarchical poly relationship. I'm the other side. I am hierarchical. I'll give this word up. So I prefer to have primary relationship and then everything else. So I feel like we cover different things. We see things from different perspectives. We are also not afraid of, saying, oh, this is how I see it. This is what I think. So it gives people the variation of opinions, ways of seeing things. And so far it's been really good working with him, and people have had really positive response to these webinars together. So this is a long story short from my end. So I don't know why Roy works with me on these, but this is from my end.
From the last from what I remember from the last webinar, that was just Leah and Roy, and someone asked, well, I was there at the side, and someone asked about jealousy, and both of you were like, well, I don't really experience it myself, but it kind of, and I was like, oh, I do.
Yeah, so
I can talk about my experience.
I think your experiences and the way you feel things is really, really, I think, helpful, and to understand different sides of the situation. I have been in hierarchical relationship in the past. I've been in open relationship, which was more kind of casual as well. And I've spoken to many people who have struggled with jealousy. And so I've heard other stories as well. And I think that you don't necessarily need to feel all these things yourself or have exactly the experiences, but it's important to have the empathy to recognize what people are feeling. And yeah, and we also like have come across different instances that challenged how we communicate, that we needed to kind of work through, and that experience can help other people potentially. Questions? Any tips of how to express insecurities to partners without feeling or being judged? So this is interesting because I think if you're feeling like you might be judged by your partner, then again, the first step is to discuss how you communicate and build trust together and express that you want to be heard without being judged. That's like the first step before you start talking about all your insecurities. So it's about putting it on the table that we need to have open communication that doesn't include judgment.
Yeah, a sort of preface kind of.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about bringing this up with you because I'm worried that you'll judge me, or I've been judged in the past for it, and kind of. So it's okay to say that that's an apprehension that you're having, as the first thing, so that the other person is aware that, that they might need to just keep that in mind.
In non-monogamy, it's obviously crucial to be open and transparent with your emotions and your needs. The way you express it, the way you talk to your partner is going to make a huge difference in whether it can work or not. So I'm very much a believer in radical honesty and communicating both what your needs and desires as well as your insecurities. But in order to do that effectively, the person hearing this kind of content needs to also be secure enough in themselves not to judge, not to kind of jump to an instinctive reaction of like pushing back or blaming or feeling criticized or feeling attacked. If my partner is sharing their emotions, they're not attacking me. They are talking about where they are, right? And I can try and meet them where they are and understand it from their perspective, first of all. And maybe there is something about that I can impact or change with my behavior, maybe not. Maybe all I need is just hear them. Sometimes if my partner is really distressed, and I'm not sure what to do about it, I can ask, like, what do you need from me right now? Do you need me to like solve the problem, or do you need me to just sit and listen and know that you're being heard? And just hold you and give you a safe place to express it. Maybe that's all you need.
And there's some comments, not so much a question, but someone said, I've had 2 poly men dump me for a new relationship or woman. This has made me decide against poly. How often can men actually multitask women? If they don't normally multitask well, not an insult, just real experience.
Okay. I mean, no, but I do agree that men find it, well, okay, that's probably the typecasting on me. I always thought men are not good at multitasking and women are, but I don't think it's so.
I hate this because I'm terrible at multitasking. Yeah. Women can be awful at multitasking too. And
some men are probably good at it. However, so I don't know if it's a man-woman thing or any kind of gender issue around how many relationships can you manage at the same time, right? It's an individual thing. It's all about, essentially, in every relationship, are you happy with the arrangement? Are you happy with the time and the quality of the time you spend together? The amount of communication? I think there were some other questions there about how often we communicate when we don't live together. I think there was another question we can also address about after COVID, are we, how often will we be in touch? So personally, I don't know if I can manage more than 3 ongoing relationships at the same time. I think that might be the limit for me because I want them to be romantic and intense and intimate. I want to be able to share my life in these relationships. And that would be difficult to do more than 3. But I can have, I can have as many kind of like maybe long distance relationships or people that I only see once a month or twice a month without it being too much of a constraint of my time and attention. It depends on what we both need out of that.
And I think that's important to also say, this is why certain models of relationships work better for other people than, for instance, the non-hierarchical. I'm not giving that word yet, despite saying it. So that's one of the reasons why I prefer to have one primary partner and then see other people and not actually invest much into these other relationships and put very strict boundaries around how much time I'm spending with them, how much I'm allowing to go into these relationships myself, because I don't feel like I can cope with too many people at the same time and be emotionally involved. So there's also like emotionally, I'm very monogamous. So there's like this aspect of it, because you would have romantic feelings that again would not necessarily fit into a box. I prefer the open relationship style when it comes to sexual exclusivity, but when it comes to emotional exclusivity, I'm happy to just really focus on one person. So when it comes to people leaving you because they've met someone else, maybe they weren't clear where they are with themselves and with yourself, etc. Because this is one of the questions that I've been asked by people that I've, said to, poly, I would like to have a primary partner, this. And they go like, well, what happens if you meet someone else and you want to dump me because of that? And I'm like, look, if I decide that this is you that is going to be my primary partner, I'm not going to invest equal amounts of time, energy, emotion into anyone else. So we wouldn't get to that. But I'm a beast of a different kind for some people, because I have a very tight grip on my emotions. So whether other people can grasp the fact that I can control myself to that level is a different matter, but I can. And that's why I've never felt like I would even be in a position where I would doubt who I want to be with, Yeah. So I've not had a primary relationship fall apart because I've met someone else and hooked up with them or something like this. And this is with my ex-partner that I was with for 5 years. When we opened the relationship, I was very clear with him, I'm with you because I love you, I respect you, and I wouldn't know anyone else as much as I do you, and I wouldn't risk something because I'm infatuated or whatever it is, because I know who we are, I know who you are, and I'm with you. But there's a type of thing that a lot of people are not capable of putting as a boundary. So again, it's who were these people? Where were they in terms of willingness to be only with you but then see other people? Was it more like primary relationships, secondary relationships? Was it more like polyanarchy, whatever it was? So be mindful that it's not necessarily about men can't do this because, but it could have been because of the structure of the relationship or the type of men you had the chance of meeting that felt like, oh, I'm infatuated, so I'm going to go dump you for that other person. So it's not necessarily about being poly or not poly. It's about the people and it's about the structure that you create and whether everybody's happy with that structure. I went on and on and on. Somebody should have been like, yeah, shut the fuck up. But I hope it was useful what I said about, you know, who you are, where you are, what works for you, rather than just blaming poly as a structure. And we've got we've got a lot of stuff that we haven't touched on, but I want to not overrun again and ask Roy if he would give us a shout where people can find him. And
if you're some of the questions were about starting out in the poly world and like knowing how to do it and where to find information, etc. I kind of offer that advice on a one-to-one basis or through resources I cannot provide. So if you go to Facebook and type Open Relating or facebook.com/Open Relating, or search for my name, Roy Graff, you'll be able to find the page, and then message me through there or WhatsApp me through there, and we can take it from there. Yeah, so that's where all the contact information is available. And if you have questions here that weren't answered, you can also message me and I'll try and answer that. Yeah.
Awesome. So if people want to get in touch with Roy, go find him on Facebook. And I also work with individuals on a one-to-one basis around poly as well, more on the psychological side and practical, because I'm a psychologist after all. I need to be putting that that qualification and degree to something. So yeah, if people are interested in working either with Roy or with me, please just get in touch with us. Roy has just put his email into the...
I just remembered that some people may not be on Facebook, so I put my email in the chat.
Yes, yeah. And if you Google my name, Leah Spasova or Life Sexperts, you would find my work and how to get in touch with me. And if you are in this webinar, then you have received an email from me already, so you can just reply to it. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who joined us tonight. I hope that this has been useful and thought-provoking, and I hope you would come back to Life Sexperts webinars, as we'll do more around the topic of poly and kinky stuff as well, and a lot more. So I want to thank Jessie and Roy for opening up today and sharing with us how you do your poly relationship and what kind of insights you would give people that are thinking about jealousy and trying to deal with it in the best way possible.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you everybody for the great questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we've got plenty of things in the chat bar. Stay in touch, people. If you want to hear about my events, do subscribe. I'm going to send an email tomorrow, so stay in touch. And have a wonderful evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.